Well, Trump administration says it feels good about the prospects of a deal with Iran.
And Iran has also shown willingness to continue diplomatic engagement after meeting a Pakistani delegation in Tehran. Reports say that both sides are moving closer to a framework agreement. According to the White House, discussions for a second round of talks are already underway. It also denied reports that the U.S. has requested a ceasefire.
Yes, so I saw some reporting, again, bad reporting this morning, that we had formally requested an extension of the ceasefire. That is not true at this moment. We've remained very much engaged in these negotiations, in these talks. You heard from the Vice President directly and the President this week that these conversations are productive and ongoing, and that's where we are right now. I've also seen some reporting about the potentiality for in-person discussions again. Those discussions are being had, but nothing is official until you hear it from us here at the White House.
Leavitt also said that any fresh talks would likely be in Pakistan again, as it has emerged as the only mediator. Iran has also confirmed that said contacts are continuing through Pakistan, saying U.S. must prove their seriousness for talks.
As I mentioned, the talks are continuing through the Pakistani mediator, and it remains to be seen to what extent the other side is truly serious about the claims they have made regarding diplomacy. It is the Americans who must prove their seriousness, because they have not only failed to adhere to their commitments many times, but have also fundamentally destroyed the negotiating table.
Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi welcomed a Pakistani delegation led by Army Chief Asim Munir to Tehran.
The Iranian state television said the delegation relayed a new message for the U.S. After the meeting, Araghchi said Iran remains committed to promoting peace, signaling openness to continued diplomatic engagement.
Meanwhile, Pakistan's Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif is in Saudi Arabia. Sharif will also visit Qatar and Turkey on his 4-day tour before a possible second round of U.S.-Iran peace talks.
But as diplomacy takes a step forward, Iran has also issued a warning. Mohsen Rezai, a top military advisor to Iran's supreme leader, said Iran would sink American ships enforcing a military blockade in the Strait of Hormuz.
Well, he has also warned that Iran would take U.S. soldiers hostage in case of a ground invasion, adding that Iran would take thousands of hostages, and then for each hostage, it would get $1 billion.
Well, all this comes as U.S. President Donald Trump earlier said that the war was very close to over.
I think it's close to over, yeah. I mean, I view it as very close to over. You know what? If I pulled up stakes right now, it would take them 20 years to rebuild that country. And we're not finished. We'll see what happens. I think they want to make a deal very badly.
Well, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has said that Israel and the U.S. remain aligned with shared goals that include eliminating Iran's enrichment capabilities and removing enriched material.
The Israeli military said that Israel is monitoring ceasefire talks with Iran, but remains prepared to return to attack if required. And for more on this, from Washington, D.C., we are being joined by Dr. Charles Kupchan. He's a senior fellow at the Council of Foreign Relations. Thank you so much, Dr. Kupchan, for joining us on the broadcast. Now, there's a lot to unpack here. And of course, let's start with what President Trump has indicated. He said that the war is close to being over, and the same optimism has been voiced by the press secretary as well. Now, from your vantage point, what has materially changed since the last time we spoke, which was right after the 21-hour talks in Islamabad failed to produce a breakthrough? What do you think has materially changed since then to now to justify this optimism?
Nothing. To be quite blunt, I don't think there has been any material change in the sense that the sides have not closed the gap on the question of a durable peace settlement. The U.S. has implemented a blockade, but very, very few ships are passing through. So the strait is not open. I think in some ways it is the kind of feel, the vibes, if you will. The Trump administration is expressing optimism. Trump is saying it's close to being over. You had the Pakistani military leader in Tehran You have some signs that both parties may be willing to extend a ceasefire, although nothing concrete. Here in the United States, the stock market went up as a sign of optimism that we may be close. So I don't think there is anything that's new. There's no clear development here that warrants this kind of optimism. But the fact that the Trump administration has changed its tone and does seem to see a light at the end of the tunnel is at least cause for some hope that we may be nearing the end.
Dr. Kapchan, as we speak about US President Donald Trump, he does say that a deal is preferable and promised an amazing 2 days in future. And US Senate has now rejected a resolution to block further strikes on Iran. So is Washington really moving towards diplomacy, or what are we looking at from the Washington's perspective?
Well, I think that on the one hand, Trump is pursuing the diplomatic option, that the channels of communication are open. You had a meeting here in Washington between the Israelis and the Lebanese government, the first kind of high-level meeting between Israel and Lebanon in decades. And so conversations are taking place. Messages are being passed among the parties. But at the same time, Trump is ordering more U.S. troops to the region. There are more warships heading to the region. There are now over a dozen warships in the Gulf of Oman that are effectively enforcing that blockade. And so any ship that leaves an Iranian port is identified, probably with drones and satellites, and that is then intercepted. So it's a combination of tightening the screws, increasing the economic pressure, sending more troops to the region, in other words, upping the ante, and at the same time, opening the door to diplomacy. I think the hope here is that that combination of increased military and economic pressure and a sign that a deal could be at hand, the hope is that that leads to a breakthrough.